Hi, this is Peter Sterling.
G'day, it's a big man here, Daryl Broman.
Hi, this is Brett Kenny.
G'day, it's Eric Rossini here.
Yeah, g'day guys, Aaron Raper here.
This is Ben Smith.
Hi, Bernie Gurr here.
Hi there, this is Mark Hughes.
How you going, mate? It's Mark Kiki here.
Hey guys, Nathan Kaler's here.
Brian Sini here, NRL physio.
Hi, it's Shannon Cooney, long-term Parramatta Eels tragic fan.
Hello, this is Paul Dunn.
Hey, it's Hayden Knowles here.
Hi, this is Michael Butner.
G'day, Peter Wynn here.
Hi, my name is Ron Griep. I'm from the United States of America, and currently you're listening to the Parra Cave podcast.
Broadcasting live from the Parra Cave. Hello and welcome to another bumper episode of the Parra Cave podcast. My name is Troy Warner, and I'll be your host this week and every week. And this week it is episode number 131. But before we get into this week's podcast, I just wanted to ask the listeners, did you enjoy the extra content during the week on the podcast? So the lineup will be a Legends or Fans interview on the Monday, my chat with the Duckman on his Weekend Warriors radio show, which is on Pulse FM 89.9 FM, which I will release on the Wednesday, following my live chat with him on the Sunday on Pulse FM. So you can catch that one live on a Sunday, or the replay on the podcast here on the Wednesday. And my Parra Eels chat with the guys at the Talking Parra podcast, which will be released on a Thursday. So what were your thoughts about that? Did you enjoy it? Let me know via a review on the podcast platform that you listen to. And also, please leave a 5-star rating and review as well. That would be most appreciated. What were your thoughts? Did you enjoy it? Now, to this week's chat, and it's with a rugby league legend who has played at the highest level for Australia. He's played for the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles and the Coast Giants and Seagulls, but is synonymous with the Queensland Maroons state of origin. He played in the first ever State of Origin game in 1980, and has also been a team manager for the Maroons as well. And he also played at the Redcliffe Dolphins as well in the Brisbane competition as well. And, you know, with the Dolphins winning their first 2 ever NRL games, why not get Chris Choppy Close on for a chat? So during the chat, we talk about the early days playing rugby league, playing in that Queensland Rugby League competition for a couple of teams, including the Dolphins as well, playing in that first ever State of Origin game, where he also won the Man of the Match award, the chop with Eric Groth Sr., and is that how he got his nickname Choppy? Stay tuned for that one. Moving to Manly as well in the Sydney Premiership from Queensland, and also playing against Parramatta in the 80s, including, and also there is also chat about the attempt to have Choppy play at Parramatta as well. A very interesting little bit there of the podcast. The disappointing end to his Manly career, playing for the new franchise at the Gold Coast, being a State of Origin manager for Queensland, playing also for Australia. So much to get through, so many interesting stories about Choppy's playing career and life story. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure you will too. So to that story shortly, but also stay tuned to the socials for some exciting Parra Cave podcast hats that are just around the corner. I expect them to come sometime this week, and that you'll be able to purchase for a pretty reasonable price for what I think. And they also come with the new exciting podcast logo as well. So to get your order in, all you need to do is email the podcast at www.theparracavepodcast@yahoo.com, and to order one now for only $15 plus postage and handling as well. Get your order in today. They won't last long. Thank you for the support and listening each week, and I hope you enjoy the content that comes out each week. I really enjoy bringing it to you because that's what I'm here for. I'm here for you, the fans and listeners. But of course, this wouldn't be all possible without the help and support of the sponsors of the podcast. which is all brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Eels Club in the club shop. And also a shout out to co-sponsors Beau Cook from Loan Market, your local Penrith mortgage expert, where you can contact Beau on 0401 213 236. Get in contact with him for a free chat and see what Beau can do for you, and let him know also that you heard it here on the Parra Cave podcast. Brightside Detailing and Ceramics. Scott, the owner there, is a certified detailer with 20 years experience in the industry. He does everything from car detailing, paint correction, ceramic coating, and also headlight restoration as well. You can contact Scott on Instagram at brightside_detailing_ceramics or on 0449 544 086. And again, let him know that you heard it here on the Parra Cave podcast. Also, BTZD Teamwear, the official clothing sponsor of the podcast. And also, there is coming soon, there is a limited number of podcast shirts coming for purchase as well. But in the meantime, head to www.btzd.com.au and check out what they can do for you and your sports team. And again, let them know that you heard it here on the Parra Cave podcast. Thank you to all the sponsors. With your support, it helps the podcast grow and reach more people, which is much appreciated. But you don't want to hear me. You want to hear Choppy Close and his rugby league story. So as Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy. And let's get straight into it.
Hi everyone, this is Choppy Close here from Queensland, ex-NRL player, ex-State of Origin player, ex-Queensland player, ex-Australian player, played for Sallies and Redcliffe in Brisbane when the Brisbane League was the biggest league in Queensland, and then I went down and played at Manly and returned and finished my NRL career at the Gold Coast. I then went to the bush and captain coached in the country areas for a couple of years before retiring from the game and becoming a board member of the former Origin Greats.
And as you heard from his intro, my guest today on the Parra Cave podcast is someone who is synonymous with Queensland State of Origin, both as a player and a team manager, and having the distinction of winning the first 2 Origin Man of the Match awards. He's also represented Australia, played in grand finals, and also a foundation player for the very first Gold Coast franchise, the Seagulls. You might know him as Choppy, but for those who don't know, welcome to the Parra Cave podcast, Mr. Chris Close.
Yeah, thanks very much, Troy. Just to clarify things, mate, the first ever franchise for the Gold Coast was the Gold Coast Giants. So they were there for 2 years before the Seagulls took over.
Right, there we go. I need to do my research a little bit better there, so thank you for clearing that up. Growing up in Cunnamulla in Queensland, what was life like for yourself, and was it rugby league, the game that you played?
Yeah, look, I did spend time in Queensland, in Cunnamulla in Queensland, but my father was a policeman, and we moved around to a few different areas. So I was born in Rockhampton, and we moved to Harvey Bay, where I started school, and that was my introduction to rugby league there through the school at Pyelba. And, I played there with the school and until we went to a little town in sort of the southeastern part of Queensland called Proston, where Dad took up a position there as the police officer in charge.
Yep.
And I started playing at school and then for the club at Wandai Wolves on the weekends. So, I was very lucky, Troy, that my father, was very supportive, and my mother was a crazy supporter. So between the two of them, I was given the opportunity, and the third and most welcome party to that equation was the Queensland government, because they paid for all the fuel that took me to and from training from Proston to Wandai twice a week in the police car. So it was all pretty much, a win-win situation for all of us. But, yeah, I loved the game right from the get-go, and I had an inauspicious start or an introduction to the game at that little school at Pyalba when my brother who's about 5 years older than me, went down to do some footy training, and I wagged the bus and went down and hid behind a tree to watch them train and didn't know what this rugby league thing was all about. And while they're training, one of the guys made a bit of a run with the football, and I don't know what it was, but something inside me activated, and I flew out from behind the tree and down the bank and across the field and smashed him. And the ball went in the air, and I was 5 years younger than him, and the ball went in the air, and I jumped to my feet, and I heard my brother say, "That's my brother, kill him." So I took off. I ran for my life through the school and out the front gate. And just as I got to the front gate, my dad pulled up in the police car because I hadn't made it on the bus on the way home. So I got a kick in the ring for getting off, not for wagging the bus. So, but you know what? I remember that moment vividly, and that whatever it was that activated within my brain and my body that day, really drove me to play rugby league for the whole of my life.
So then, was it? Did you follow the Brisbane rugby league competition in those days?
Definitely, yeah. It was. We didn't have a lot of access to rugby league. I mean, when you take the fact that I'm 64 years old, when I was that age, between 5 and 12, there was bugger all TV anywhere.
Yeah.
It was all black and white, and it was mostly ABC with 1 or 2 channels, and they weren't, at that early stage, they weren't advertising or televising the rugby league until a little bit later. But when they did, it was on every weekend on the ABC, and that introduced us to the Queensland senior competition, which was the Brisbane League.
Yep.
And I was always a Valley supporter back in those days. I don't know why, what led me to Valleys and why I chose Valleys, but they did have a really cool jersey, a royal blue jersey with a big white Fortitude Valley club, emblazoned in 3 large letters on the front. But they also had a very good team. They were winners, and I think all kids are attracted to winners, and I think that's probably what happened for me.
Well, then, when you started playing rugby league, it all happened very quickly for you, didn't it? You won a Brisbane competition with Fortitude Valley, and then selected for Australia. But then you also had the recognition of playing in the first ever State of Origin game at Lang Park. You scored a try, and you won Man of the Match as well. Is that first Origin game your rugby league career highlight?
Look, I've got to say, Troy, it was an amazing night for me, that game. But, there's a few things, and I'm probably one of the very few participants in the game that crossed over from state games to State of Origin games.
Yep.
So, before State of Origin came along, rugby league existed. It was very strong, and to play for Queensland was an enormous honour, even though it was a State of Origin. So what's happened, I think, mate, is that the marketing and the necessity to drive the game from a monetary point of view, really emerged for the NRL through the State of Origin concept, because they actually just threw it out there as a bit of a experiment.
Yep.
And they didn't know whether it would work or whether it wouldn't work. And, they'd only planned one game for both 1980 and 1981, and both games were at the end of the 3-game series that we played. So I'd had 6 or 7 games for Queensland prior to Origin. So I was already warmed up to that arena, and, we'd won the grand final in 79 from Valleys, and, Wally Lewis was a teammate of mine in that game.
Yep.
And, I'd gone from Valleys over to Redcliffe on a 2-year contract in 1980. And obviously, when the concept was bandied around through the hierarchy of the game, us Queenslanders who'd been copping a hiding in the state series for quite a few years probably saw it as a opportunity to, kick up another gear and get our players back who were traditionally playing for New South Wales back to Queensland, and we could, try on that concept of Origin.
Yep.
And that was where it really lit. And I think timing was another great thing in the advent of Origin and the importance of what it's actually achieved for the game of rugby league in Australia. It was actually in the death throes of representative arena because nobody could beat New South Wales and nobody could beat Australia in the international games.
Yep.
So it really turned everything on its ear. And, we were blessed to have a guy called Arthur Beetson who, was in and out of reserve grade at that time, that year. Yep. And he was 35 years of age, and he probably wasn't entitled from a health perspective back in those days to be put into that arena, but he did. And, he lit a fire in all of us. There was 9 of us, I think, that were only 20 or 21 in that first Queensland Origin squad. And, when he addressed us at Corbett Park for our very first training run, oh, my God, it just really raised everything in me. And I had some other stories, that I could draw on in the way that I'd been treated because I actually, that year, myself and Rowan Hancock were the only 2 resident Queenslanders that made the Australian team. And we toured New Zealand, and this was prior to the very first Origin.
Yep.
And they treated us as though we were second-rate citizens, and more so Rowan. And we both fortunately proved them wrong. But there were some personal things that happened, and I carried those grudges, and I took them with me into that first ever Origin game, and with the influence of Arthur Beetson and what it meant for him to represent his state for the first time at 35 years of age, when his career was virtually over, and for him to, transmit to us just how important that was and what responsibility we carried as human beings, as players for our state. It was just a remarkable journey and at a time in my life where I probably would have done anything. I was a Arthur Beetson devotee, and I would have done whatever he wanted me to do. If he just asked, I would have done it.
Yeah.
So he had this magic character that just enveloped you, and he was such a large, imposing man, and he was such a joyful man as well. But he also had a streak of determination and physicality that just lifted you up.
Is there one funny Arthur story you can tell us, or one story that stands out particularly about Arthur?
I've got a million Arthur stories that I could tell, but the one that for me, didn't really involve rugby league, and I think it's just one of the best stories I've ever, been fortunate enough to be aware of. And Arthur owned the Moreton Bay Hotel, which is on the main street at Redcliffe, the main shopping precinct.
Okay.
It runs along the coastline. And it runs from where his hotel was at the top of the hill down a very, sloping hill for about 1.5 kilometres. And Arthur woke up one night in the middle of the night, and he went out onto the balcony, which he religiously did, to have a leak over the railing. And the hotel was built in a sort of a square shape with a courtyard surrounded by the bottom level of the building, which was the hotel and bistro and Chinese restaurant, and then the top was where all the accommodation was and Arthur's private quarters.
Yeah.
And on this particular night, he just got out onto the veranda and he started to do his business, and he looked, and there was a guy like a Spider-Man was climbing the trellis up to the second level.
Yep.
And Arthur, obviously thought that here we go, we got a bloke breaking in, and so he yelled at him, and the bloke actually looked around, and Arthur's standing there, in all his glory, 6'4", 100 and probably 25, 30 kilos, taking a leap in his undies. And the bloke's first response was to drop from where he was onto the ground and take off. So Arthur, his first response was to leap over the balcony as well and climb down the trellis and chase him.
Yeah, wow.
So down they went, and Arthur's heading downhill, and this bloke's going for his life. And Arthur was still a great athlete, and he was gaining on him. He was getting a bit of speed, and I think the bloke could feel him or hear him breathing behind him. So he done a quick U-turn and went back up the hill. And it took Arthur about 10 to 20 metres before he could actually slow down enough with his momentum to turn around and chase him up the hill.
Yeah,
which he did. and he was off up the hill, and he was getting a bit buggered, and he thought this bloke's going to get away from me. And he looked over, and there was a young couple parked in their car, you know, having a little canoodle and a cuddle and a kiss. And without even any announcement, he raced over and he opened the passenger side door and dropped straight in that seat with the little girl in the middle and the driver. And he said, "Chase that bloke." Well, they really did everything they were told, and he did. And he finally caught him. Oh. And the funny thing was, mate, he was actually booked into the hotel, and he forgot his key.
Oh, right, okay.
And he was trying to get into his room, and the police said to him, "So why did you take off? Why did you keep running?" He said, "You see the size of that bastard that was chasing me? There's no way I was going to let him catch me." So
classic.
That's my favourite Arthur Beetson story ever. And I know it's got nothing to do with rugby league, but
that was great. That was great.
Summed up Arthur's character in every way. His athleticism, his ability to get the job done, and his humour. He was a very funny man.
Yeah, no, that's a great story for sure. Well, the next year in 81, Queensland win again. You score another try and again win the man of the match. But one thing that stands out in that game, and myself being a Parramatta fan, is the backhander to Eric the Guru Growth. Talk us through that moment.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, it was all built up fury within me, and you know, I just felt this obligation to do everything I could for Queensland, you know, as a player, as a person. You know, I understood that Origin stands apart from club football, and you know, it felt really real to me, I suppose. And I realised that if we wanted to win and we wanted to claim our territory and we wanted to show the world that we weren't the easy beats that the New South Wales press and so forth had seen, that we had to, you know, stand up for ourselves when we had moments where we could. And with that particular incident, Eric Growth is probably one of the two best wingers I've ever seen in my life. And I always say to people that if I was picking a team, an Australian team, to represent me to save my life, he'd be on one wing and Kerry Bowstead would be on the other. And you can throw in all the current players that you like. Yep. I would take those two over any of them. And they were both very strong, very fast and very determined. But Eric was a freak in that department. And, you know, Colin Scott all but scored the try, and Eric had chased him down and prevented the try from happening. And obviously when I got there, I was, you know, trying to advance it, and he'd wrapped Scotty's legs up.
Yep.
And I actually did say to him, and he will confirm this when he gets, you know, and he has confirmed it in the past, that he was hanging on tight, you know, and I said, let him go and let him up, and, you know, yapping at him, and it was all happening in the millisecond. And when I knew straight away that he was not going to let him go, so I thought, well, we've got to get this try. We can't do that work and not get this try to win this game. So I grabbed him by the hair and I pulled his head back, and he snapped straight back into the position that he was in. So I grabbed it again, but this time I whacked him as I pulled his hair back, and obviously I hit him, you know, full on, right in the melon, and looked very violent. There's no doubt about that. But Eric sort of just slumped. Then he just gave. He was knocked out. So he let go, and Scotty got up and played the ball, and I was dummy half. And I remember Terry Fahey, who was an enormous winger himself, was on one side of the play the ball, and I think Mick Cronin might have been on the other side. And you know, I played the ball, and Steve Rogers was marker. Oh, sorry, Scotty played the ball. Steve Rogers was marker, and I picked it up, and you know, I just dived over and scored. But the funny thing about that one, Troy, you know, years later we were having a beer. We started to play those legend games, and we were down at actually Parramatta, staying in a hotel there, and Steve was in the team, Stevie Rogers, and we were just having a beer, and he recounted that moment. He said, "You know what?" He said, "I don't know what devil possessed you that night." He said, "But when you stood up with the ball in your hand and I looked at you, your eyes were rolling back in the back of your head, and I thought, there is no way I'm going to be able to stop this thing." So, But, look, I've copped a lot of flack for that over the years, but I would do it again tomorrow in exactly the same way. And if that was the same result that we got, then I think it'd be worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. Is that where the nickname Choppy came from at all?
No, it's a really pretty soft story about the Choppy nickname. It came from a friend of mine many years before that when I was about 12 or 13, and I used to go out to their property. They had a cattle property, do a bit of work, and part of that work was poisoning trees with a little tomahawk.
Okay.
And, they wouldn't give me one of these really razor-sharp tomahawks because they didn't trust me with it. And eventually I talked them into it because I really wanted to do what they were doing. But what I didn't realise is how hard work it was. So they reckon I actually went chop, chop, sat down for the rest of the day, didn't do anything. So they called me Chop Chop, and it just got shortened to Choppy.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's for being a lazy bastard.
No, that's fair enough. Well, after your playing career and in Origin, you were Queensland manager for many years under Fatty Vaughton, Wayne Bennett, Mark Murray. What are your favourite memories of managing Queensland? I mean, obviously that 95 series sticks out, and the 0-1 return of Alfie Langer.
Yeah, look, there's so many great memories. I think of myself to be such a privileged person, Troy, to be given that honour, to be a manager of the Queensland State of Origin side. And I was invited in by one of my great mentors of the game, Dick Tosser-Turner. And I don't know what he saw in me, but he asked me if I would help him and then transition into a role under his mentorship as a manager. And, after all the years I'd played and all the great joy and success that we'd had in the Origin, and if you look at my Origin career, it's nowhere near the most illustrious career, but I'm very proud of my achievements. I played 9 games. We won 6 of those games, and I was man of the match in 2.
Yeah, it's a fair record.
For me, that's a record that I would die very proud of to hold. Mate, I got selected in 7 games and pulled out of it through injury. So there's a whole story behind that. It's not just about looking at statistics on a blank piece of paper. And for me, that career was so important, and I still carry the torch for Queensland and what it means to play for Queensland, and the fact that it's a representative game and that you're representing everybody, not just you, your family, but everyone's families, each other's families, people you don't know, kids you don't know, people that have waited all these years for Queensland's success, and then we've got to maintain that. So when I was asked to be the manager, I gave it everything I had, exactly the same as I did when I was a player. And my goal was that the players didn't have to worry about one thing. All they needed to do was get themselves ready for the game and play, and that was the coach's job. And I never interfered with that, and they never interfered with what I did, and I did what the coach wanted, and I did as much as I could to get that in a play where the players didn't have to worry about it. So going into that arena with such a professional network was a great honour and a great privilege to be there for us. I think I was there for 12, 14 years. Yeah. Is
Origin your favourite time of year each year?
I think it is. It's also the most nerve-wracking time for me because I understand the pain of defeat.
Yep.
Those few years I played for Queensland that weren't Origin, some of the things that were said about us who were representing our state to the best of their ability were horrible. They were hurting, they were cutting, and I was 20.
Yep.
So it cut deep for me, and I don't forget that stuff. And I don't think, when it's your livelihood and you're trying to look after your family and get something, put away for your life, to be ridiculed and criticised the way we were from the New South Wales press and so forth, it means something to me for Queensland to win.
Well, in 1982, you signed with Manly. Was that the late, great Bob Fulton who got you to Manly on the back of those first 2 Origin games?
I don't know, to be fair, Troy, what Bozo's role was in that, because he wasn't the coach when I actually went there.
Yeah.
Ray Ritchie was the coach when I first went to Manly, and Bozo didn't come until either the following year or the year after. So the catalyst was Ken Arthurson, another one of my great mentors in life. And it was a really unique and exciting period for me. I'd played the first Origin and one man of the match, and I played the second Origin and one man of the match. And I had 8 clubs from Sydney who were courting me, including Parramatta.
Okay.
And, they flew up all of their senior executives to meet with myself. In those days, player managers were a very rare commodity, but I had a family solicitor that took the place of a player manager, and we conducted all of the interviews in their office. So they asked all the important questions, and I answered all of the personal stuff that was important to me and my wife at the time.
Yep.
So, when they came up, we always went through a routine of asking the same questions. I knew what I wanted, and I knew how I wanted to get that, and I knew where we wanted to be. And Arco arrived, and, every other CEO that came up, with probably the exception of Parramatta, to be quite fair, Dennis Fitzgerald, every other CEO that came up, they couldn't give us an answer on the spot. They had to go back and, consult with their board or whatever. And everything that we asked Ken Arthurson, he said, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Yes, I can do that. To the extent that we actually said, so you sure?
Okay, yeah, to get that reassurance.
He looked at us like we had 5 heads. And he said, I can tell you straight here, if that's what you want, that's what you'll get. So my mind was made up very quickly. And I met him sort of later in the piece. He was probably the 6th club manager that had come up, CEO, talked to me. And then I had to make a choice between them and Parramatta, because I really wanted to go to Parramatta. But I think what swayed the deal for me was that, they set me up to be able to buy a house on the Narrabeen beaches there. And
nice.
I looked at Parramatta and I looked at Manly, and I looked at the way both teams were playing. They're both very good. Obviously, Parramatta went on to beat us in 82 and 83 with one of the greatest rugby league club sides you'd ever wish to have in your armoury. Much to my disgust, but at the end of the day, we had our opportunity and we weren't good enough to beat them. So so I ended up at Manly, mate, for that reason.
Is that where the Manly-Parramatta rivalry, you think, started, from that 82 grand final, or even earlier?
No, it was pretty much in place before that. I think, Roy Masters had established the Silvertail moniker.
Yep.
And, that was through the West Magpies. Obviously, Parramatta are the next layer out.
Yep.
Everybody jumped on that bandwagon, and there was a real intensity between the games between Manly and Parramatta. There's no doubt about that. And I think, Jack Gibson was stamping his authority, and obviously off the field, it was important for Dennis Fitzgerald and Arthurson and all that. So it was a strong rivalry off the field as well as on the field. And both clubs had very good players in that era. And it was always a tough game. And whenever we played Parra, we knew we were going to struggle. And we beat them a lot of times, but they won the 2 important ones.
Yeah, well, you had 9 wins, 12 losses in your career against Parramatta. So pretty close there. But as you said, unfortunately, not the big games, 2 grand finals in a row.
9, and I've concluded the 2 grand finals. I'd have been very happy with that, but obviously it didn't, mate. And I remember walking into the SG Noble stand after the game, after we come up from the dressing sheds, and the first person I bumped into was Jack Gibson.
Yeah.
And he said hello, and he said, well, you fucked that up, didn't you? You went to the wrong club. And I said, yep, looks that way. I had no other comeback.
Yeah, no.
That's so, but he was adamant to get me as well, and it was only I think it was just the fact that the beach was the catalyst for me, mostly probably for my wife.
Yeah. You represented Australia against New Zealand in 1985, and no doubt that rates as a high achievement for yourself, and once again you score a try on debut in a rep game.
Yeah, look, I'd played for Australia in 1980, and I was there again, and these are some of the things that irk me a little bit in rugby league. I was there again in 84, but never got counted because I was a reserve for a test match and never got off the field.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of reasons why I didn't get on the field, and one of them was that the coach had taken a bit of a, I don't know what it was about me, and never gave me a run. So I had no control over that. But, I played for Australia in 1980. We toured New Zealand then, and we toured again in 1985. So in 1982, when the Kangaroo Tour was on, which is probably the closest I would have been to getting selected in the Kangaroo Tour, I actually, done my knee, and I was out for most of that first season.
Yep.
At Manly, and came back, just prior to the semi-finals, and I was out of weight, out of condition, and really wasn't on top of my game, and then we got beaten in the grand final, and obviously that would have counted a lot towards me missing out on that Kangaroo Tour in '82.
Yeah, the Invincibles, I think that tour was nicknamed.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
lose again. Yeah,
and then they did it again in '86.
Yeah.
And in 1987, Manly win the comp, but you play in the reserve grade grand final. How did that make you feel, missing out on that elusive premiership at Manly in first grade?
Well, it was a really shitty feeling, mate. I mean, what had happened was the Gold Coast had come to talk to me halfway through the year to go up there to start in the new franchise, the Giants, in 1988.
Yep. And
I had a year to run on my contract with Manly. And, the manager at the time, of the club at the time, was Doug Daly. And Arco had moved into the Australian Rugby League Championship at that stage, and Doug was running Manly, and there was a bit of fallout, mate. There was some misunderstandings that had happened within the club, and I for whatever reason, I won't go into, I shouldered the blame for that, and, wrongly. I wasn't person responsible, but I probably could have and should have spoken up a little bit more, but I didn't. But anyway, what I then did was ask if I could get a release for the last year of my contract.
Okay.
And I was told no originally. So I went to Ken Arthurson, who, his words to me were that, you come down, Chris, and I know that you've got no family down here, or your family's in Queensland, and at that stage, my wife and I had lost a couple of children, along the way, and it was a really delicate, emotional time for both of us. He said, mate, when you want to go home, you let me know, and you can go without any repercussions. And those words were in the back of my head. So I followed up on that, and Arco was true to his word and overruled the decision by the CEO, because he was still chairman of the Manly board, and on that result, I know they were told that I was to be dropped to reserve grade, and that's what they did.
Okay. Yeah.
So they dropped me to reserve grade, as soon as I'd announced that I was going to the Gold Coast, and that was a very harrowing time for me. It was just cruel and unnecessary. And, just bastardry, just sheer bastardry. But at the end of the day, mate, what could I do? I had to go forward, and I couldn't change that. But, what really stuck in my mind was they actually had an injury, and they pulled me out of reserve grade to play against the Bulldogs the following week. We played the Bulldogs, and I won man of the match, and they dropped me to reserve grade.
Oh, wow.
So, that's when it's personal. It's not about your ability, and that shouldn't come into the game. It shouldn't be part of it.
No, definitely not.
But it was, So it was a tough period for me, mate. I actually played the reserve grade grand final, got beaten by Penrith that day. A couple of very good players in that game. Mark Guy was in that game, and little halfback, Dwyer. Can't think of his. Anyway, he was a good little player. From Penrith, I think. Yeah, so Penrith Junior, he may have been.
Yep.
But so I actually we got dressed that day in the Brawongle stand, which, for anyone listening, that was the newest stand at the SCG.
Yep.
Sydney Cricket Ground.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, and the first grade team got dressed in the Noble stand, which was the members stand, SG Noble. So, I got changed over there after the game. I was actually in my back in my civilian clothes to go and watch the game.
Okay.
And, Bob Thornton walked into the dressing shed and said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I want you on the bench." I said, "Well, you never told me."
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, well, I just thought you would have known." I said, "Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, okay." So anyway, he said, "Would you sit on the bench?" And what could I say? You know, I got an opportunity to sit on the bench for the grand final.
Yeah.
So I got changed back into the clothes that I taken off, my playing clothes. Grabbed my bag, went over to the members stand, you know, to the dressing sheds. Went through the warm-up and they ran onto the team. I ran onto the field and won the game, and I think I was maybe the only reserve that didn't get a run. And I said to him after that, and I was pretty. It was. I could talk to Bozo fairly openly, you know. Yeah. And I said, "So what happened?" He said, "I was instructed that you were not to take the field."
Oh,
so,
wow.
so you know, that's how I left the club. But I can tell you that I had 6 great years at Manly. I loved every minute that I was there. I don't begrudge it. What happened, that was part of the game, and we all moved on.
Well, then, yeah, you moved to the Gold Coast, and wouldn't you know it, you scored a try on Gold Coast debut game.
Yeah. Probably, you know, probably unexpectedly that, you know, but once again, I got up there and we had a good team. We had a really good team, and Bob McCarthy was the coach, and we expected to do well. And, you know, it's sort of, we started really well with that game. We should have won that game. I'm not sure even if we did, but we should have. There wasn't much in it, maybe a point. And, you know, it was a great start for us. And then, you know, we actually lost our first 7 games. And we came to play the Broncos down at the Gold Coast. And they'd won their first 7 games.
Okay, yeah.
So that was their first defeat, and our first victory was winning that game. And I won man of the match for that game as well. So I was pretty happy with that.
I'll tell you what, if you run out this year for the Dolphins in their round 1 game against the Roosters, I reckon you'd be a special to score a try.
Firstly, they can't run. They'd have to take me out on a golf cart.
But all these debut games, you're scoring tries, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you, mate. I didn't realise it until you just said that. So, look, I had some real highlights in my career, and as I said, I'm never going to be remembered like Mel Meninga or Wayne Lewis or Gene Miles or whatever, but, you know, I gave it everything I could, and I had some good luck and I had some bad luck along the way.
Well, in 1991, your playing career comes to an end at the Gold Coast, and unfortunately it's a loss to the North Sydney Bears. You actually played front row in that game. Was it then that you thought it was time to retire?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I actually transitioned into the forwards before I left Manly.
Okay.
And when I went up there, I was surprised that Bob McCarthy played me in the centres the first year. And I transitioned at the end of that year into the forwards. So the move was always going to take place. There was no way that I could maintain the speed that I needed to play in the centres.
Yep.
Against your speeches of the game that were coming through, and I'm on my way out. You know, so but I absolutely loved playing second row, front row, and relished it. And as a matter of fact, I think in '91, Arthur Beetson wanted to select me as a prop for the Origin side.
Okay.
Yeah, so the selectors didn't agree with him, but and they may have been right, but I don't know. You know, at the end of the day, I enjoyed the forwards, and I often, which people won't even acknowledge, or probably that I often top the tackle count in the forwards. So, yeah.
Nice one. Well, time for some common league questions. What is your favourite game that you played during your career? And it doesn't have to be those games that we talked about. It could be a game where you just thought, oh, geez, I really loved that game.
Yeah, look, I think this is going to sound as weird as hell. Really, really weird. But I played my first grade game in Brisbane.
Yeah.
That was a game that meant a lot to me. I'd been out at Cunnamulla the year before. We'd won the premiership out there. I'd scored 54 tries for the season. And I come down to Valleys and played a few games reserve grade and was doing really well. And then I got my opportunity in the first grade. And we played at Langlands Park, which is Eats ground.
Okay.
And I was playing along some of those idols that I absolutely looked up to when I was a kid, when I became a Valley supporter. And one of them was a bloke called Jerry Fitzpatrick, who was a centre, and he was my centre partner that day.
Okay, wow.
And, I actually, the ball came out along the back line and he passed it to me, and a winger who actually played Origin, I think he played maybe 1 or 2 games, Steve Stacey, was a fairly solid winger. He came in off the wing and he hit me and knocked me out. He actually, put me, I was concussed.
Okay, yeah.
But I didn't know that. So I got up and played the ball and got back into position and played another 30 or 40 minutes before they realised I was in Gaga land.
Yep.
But believe it or not, I scored a try that day as well.
Oh, wow. There you go.
They eventually got me off the field and put me in an ambulance and took me to the Mater Hospital.
Yep.
And the reason it was so special for me, because all of my in-law family had came down from Cunnamulla to watch the game, and all my mates that I grew up with at Beau Desert came up from Beau Desert, and they were all there. And it was a really special time for me. It was for me to say, well, I've made it. Here I am.
Nice. Well, speaking of hard tackles, who didn't you want to be tackled by? Who was the hardest hitter, do you think?
Look, there's a lot of them. That's the thing, and some of them probably, I can't even remember their names. There was the second row that played for Penrith. I wish I could remember his surname. He was a real hard hitter, and Ronnie Hilditch from Parramatta.
Yeah.
Ronnie could hit really hard. Mick Cronin,
Okay.
My greatest adversary, Mick Cronin, was probably one of the strongest players I'd ever played against. And when he hit you hard.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there's quite a few. There's only a couple that would stand right out, but at the end of the day, if you played NRL, you could usually hit pretty hard.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have a favourite try that you scored during your career? Is there one that stands out?
Yeah. Definitely the one, the game in Origin, the first Origin. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it came from nothing. It came from, absolutely no opportunity, and the ball came out. Mel got it. Mel gave it to me, and I was actually standing flat-footed, and I can remember thinking, what the fuck you passing it to me for? So the only thing I could do was cut back inside, and I did. And as I cut back, and I always had an ability to pick up speed really quickly, but once I picked up speed, didn't matter how far I went, I never got any faster. I had good speed off the mark, and I could maintain that, but I couldn't go faster. And to give you an example, players like Dale Shearer, the further they ran, the faster they got.
Yep.
So I went back through, and I had a great swerve, and I remember I swerved, and as I swerved, I gained momentum, and the gap opened up like Sydney Heads. Took off through that gap, and there was nobody there, and the next thing I'm looking at Graham Eadie, and he's coming at me, and he's one bloke you don't want to get hit by. So I swerved the other way, and as I went, he dived to try and tap my ankles, but missed. And then I straightened up and scored the try, and the roar that came up from Lang Park, like the crowd, and those were the days before there was a bandstand there in that outer. It was all terraces. Was absolutely amazing. And, I looked up and I looked at the crowd and I thought, far out, this is what this is about. Let's keep going. So that was a great try for me and a great moment for me.
Yeah, and it gets replayed every Origin year, so it's a crack of a try, and I think that probably leads me into the next question, because I think I'm probably going to know the answer, but other than your home ground, did you have a favourite ground that you used to love playing at?
Oh, Lang Park was a great arena for me. I had great success there, won the grand final with Valleys. Missed the grand final with Redcliffe because I got sent off in the last fixture game and missed the season the year that I went to the year before I went to Manly. Played, my first interstate game there. Played my first Origin there. Played my first Test there. Scored a try in all those games, and it just seemed that wherever I went to Lang Park, something good would happen, and that was great for me. And as I said, we played those games, those early Origin games. A lot of them were at Lang Park, and we won a lot of those. So, yeah, it's the best place in Australia for rugby league.
And no doubt you still call it Lang Park, not Suncorp Stadium.
I try to call it Suncorp, and it just doesn't come out of my mouth. Park is what I remember.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And what I suppose for me, Troy, I went there as a kid to watch football, with my father, and my brother played there before me. And, all those things were great memories for me, the old wooden grandstands. And I went there as a kid, probably around 8 or 9 years age to, compete in the sprint racing, the state finals. So I didn't win the state final, but, I went down there and could hold my head up high for a young kid that came from the bush. And, I wasn't embarrassed. I didn't get streeted. I only got beat. So, yeah, a lot of great memories for me.
My one and only memory of going to the old Lang Park was in 1988. When World Expo was on, the family went up there for holidays, and we managed to get down to Lang Park, and obviously it wasn't open. There was nothing happening there, and Dad just saw a gate open, so he just slowly walked in, and we saw the field and everything. So
it was an amazing place. It really was, and it has so many stories to tell.
Yeah, definitely. What about a least favourite ground? Did you hate playing at a game? At a ground?
Leichhardt Oval was a terrible ground. It really was. The dressing sheds were disgraceful originally when I first started to go there. And the field surface was never great. It was always... We played a lot of night games there, so it was always slippery and whatever. And they improved it, there's no doubt about that. But in those early days, it was a shocker.
Yeah. That's fair enough. A few people say that one. Certainly does need if they're going to continue to play NRL games there, they certainly need to have a bit of an upgrade there to upgrade the facilities for the players and the fans, no doubt.
Yeah, I think the fans like it, but I don't think they're playing. I think the players are, aren't that fussed about the playing surface and the way it is there. So, and whether that's changed or not, mate, I've got to be honest. I haven't been there for that long. I couldn't tell you what the surface was like.
Now, you played with and against some champion players during your career, absolutely. Is there someone that you would have loved to have had in your team or even play against during your career?
Oh, look, I've got so many players, particularly after I left the game and managed the Queensland team and then managed the Australian team.
Yeah.
A lot of players that, could have become Queenslanders. But, look, I think... for me, Mick Cronin was an outstanding player. I played alongside Mick and I played with him. Wally was the best ever, still is. No one would match Wally. If Wally was playing now, he would be so far in front that, they wouldn't know what was going on with him. So many great players that I was lucky enough to play around, Steve Rogers, another one. He was an amazing player. So I was very lucky. I was in I think, a really great time that I played. Some fantastic players, some real characters as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Was Wally Lewis the player that you were confident you were going to win if he played?
Well, there's often times, mate, where if he didn't do what he did, we wouldn't have won.
Yeah.
I remember, quite distinctly, and I say this openly, there were times when we looked at Wally and we go, well, what are you going to do?
Okay, yeah.
I'm Wally in it. Do something.
Yeah.
He always could. He could always find something. He had this unbelievable timing and ability to read the game, read the opposition, and put himself and those around him in the best position to capitalise on that. And that's what made him so great.
Yeah, nah, King Wally Lewis,
He had a
immortal.
couple of traits in him as well. He could fight anyone without any fear.
Yeah.
Hit like a steam train, and he was fast. So not only was he probably the smartest player I'd ever seen, he had the greatest package all around.
Would he fall into the next question about the biggest pest or sledger on the field at the clubs you played at?
Not really.
No?
Not really. Wally was always the greatest victim. He was the greatest victim of all time. He whinged at the referees, and I always used to say Wally would go down with dandruff. He was a great actor, and he always overemphasised anything that happened to him on the field. So if you qualify that as a pest, yeah, but I would say that Ross Rudrick would have been the greatest pest.
Okay.
His nickname was the pest. So, he was my captain coach at Bally's when I went there, and then I still, had dealings with him afterwards as a rep player and whatever, and yeah. He could scare people up all the time.
Nice. What about a larrikin or prankster at club level, or even during Origin time? Or what did they do? What did they get up to?
We used to do all sorts of things, with the guys. I know I was at Redcliffe when I played there one year, and they were probably the biggest prankster club that I played with. They just used to find all these little things, and one of them, a bloke called John Barber, who was a New Zealand international, he played front row for Redcliffe and New Zealand, but he was a big, strong bloke, JB, and he was petrified of green frogs. And the dressing sheds at Redcliffe Oval had, 6 or 8 resident green frogs in there at any one time.
Yeah.
So I remember that Bobby James came to training one day. He was our hooker, and they're all mates. They're all pretty good mates. And and Bobby was the editor of a sports page of the local Redcliffe Times, I think it was called, the newspaper. And they used to have his footy column there with a little photo of Jamesy with a big broad smile on it. For whatever reason, and pardon to any of the listeners, that Johnny Barber had come to training, ripped the photo out, and wiped his bum on it, and put it on the rubbing table. Just as a bit of a prank.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jonesy knew that JB was scared of green frogs, so he came out of the shower with a green frog hidden in his hand, and JB had just finished dressing himself after having a shower, ready to go home from training, and he dropped this green frog down his shirt, and I've never seen an eruption like it in my life.
Yeah,
he actually took the shirt off himself to get the frog, and he spun that quickly that the frog flew off and hit the brick wall, and sadly slid down the wall. It was again. And then he looked at Bob Jones with fire in his eyes and just went for him. And I remember Bobby Jones picked up a star picket to defend himself with, and then he realised that isn't even going to stop him. So he ran and he went, and we didn't see him for the rest of the night. We don't know where he ran to, but he never came back.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, we'll wrap things up with the set of 6 segment. A bit of fun personality questions. What's your favourite sport outside of rugby league?
Probably boxing, I think.
Okay.
I came through an era with Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier and George Foreman, some of the greatest fighters of all time, and in the lesser divisions, Hitman Hearns, and there were that many of them. So boxing's a great sport, and I love it.
What do you think of the current crop of Australian boxers that are going around?
I think we've got good boxers, mate, and we're doing really well. I think the Zoo boys are very talented. I think what Horn done was amazing. He really rose from nowhere.
Yeah,
definitely. And fought one of the greatest of all time to become a world champion. That's Rocky stuff, Rocky Balboa stuff. And I think that was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
What do I cook?
Yeah, what's a...
I'm a bit of a self-proclaimed chef, but I can cook a great steak. There's no doubt about that. I've practiced it, and I'm prepared to ask people how they want it. and that's how I'll provide it.
Oh, nice. Well, how do you have your steak?
Medium rare.
Okay.
And I like it on the grill. I like it on the barbecue grill, the open grill, with you can get a bit of char on the outside and plenty of blood in the middle.
Nice. Who is the most famous person you'd love to meet and have a beer or coffee with and a chat?
Definitely Muhammad Ali. In time, I would love to just had an opportunity to say hello to him and sit in awe of his magnificent appearance. I mean, he was a psychological giant as well as a sporting giant and a freak of a sportsman person. And the effort that he had to put himself through to continue to come back and win those titles with all the prejudice and, that he would have had to face at a world level was remarkable. I think he was simply the greatest.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Now, if you're on a deserted island, stuck on a deserted island, which three former teammates, wouldn't you want with you, and why?
Oh, definitely wouldn't want the Rat. He'd be trying to, screw you over with everything that he tried to do while he was there. I think Wally would demand service.
Okay.
So he'd be one. And there was a little bloke played. He's a great guy too. I shouldn't say this, but he played in the Brisbane competition, and was a really good player, Greg Holborn. And he was probably the greatest pest of all time that played rugby league in Queensland. Yeah, so he would have been annoying.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That's a fair mantle to be the biggest pest rugby league player in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't follow the rugby league path, what profession do you think you would have taken up?
All I've had dibs on myself as being a solicitor.
Okay.
But you know what? I was no chance. I sort of made my mind up very early that I wanted to play rugby league, and I was willing to make the sacrifices around that. But that meant that I sort of had this half-pied cockiness about me, this stupidity that I could do whatever I liked at school, and that wasn't the greatest thing. I've got to be honest, it probably was the most detrimental thing. And, instead of knuckling down and trying hard with my school, and maybe making a bit of a pathway into that legal or lawful journey, I was a smart ass. And I told everybody all I was going to do was play rugby league. I did that, but I was just a bit too ahead of myself. I wasn't on the big money they're on now. So,
yeah, no, definitely.
Which I blamed Dad for. I just said, Dad, you just went away too soon, mate. You should have waited and let me. I won't tell you the reply that he gave me.
Yeah, no, how times have changed, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And the last one, who is your favourite band or solo artist to listen to?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I've got so many. The one I admire the most, and I think the person who's got the most talent that I could ever say is Elvis Presley.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you listen to his songs. It doesn't matter what era he was in, whether it's at the start or the end or the middle. His voice is unbelievable, and he was an amazing performer.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this one will probably be a bit of a hard one then. What's your favourite Elvis song?
I think Suspicious Minds.
Oh,
yeah. So I just like the rhythm and the way that he sings it. There was a version brought out by I think Fine Young Cannibals, which was pretty good as well.
Yeah.
So they took a great song and did a great job with it. But Elvis was the man. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Chris Choppy Close, thank you very much for your time and your chat today here on the Parrot Cave podcast. I really enjoyed it and appreciate your time. I'm sure the fans will love listening to the stories, and you're a player that I watched grow up, play their career, and one day I hope to catch up one day and have a beer and listen to more of your stories, because I could have spoken for hours. But so, Chris Close, thank you very much for your time and chat today here on the Parrot Cave podcast.
Well, thank you, Troy, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you, mate. And, I'll buy the first round when we do get together, and we'll have a few laughs. Cheers, mate.
Well, welcome back, and thanks for listening to Chris Choppy Close and his rugby league and life story. I really appreciate his time and chat. I really enjoyed it. The thing I really enjoyed and found amazing was that in every major debut game he played, he ended up scoring a try, which is an amazing stat. So hopefully, maybe around State of Origin time, I might try and get Choppy on the podcast as my Queensland correspondent, and I'll also put out a feeler for a New South Wales correspondent as well. So if you can think of someone that I've had on the podcast from New South Wales that you would like to hear from during the Origin time, let me know. And we'll try and do like some podcast content around the Origin series as well. Just a little bit more extra little content for you, the listeners, to listen to. Once again, a quick shout out and thanks to Jack's Pale Ale, a fantastic major sponsor of the podcast. And it is available in the club shop at Parramatta Leagues Club. So it's perfect for that Eels fan or beer lover as well. Just drop into the club shop and get yours today. Also, keep an eye on the social media channels for what's happening at Parramatta Leagues Club each and every week. Beau Cook from Loan Market. His contact number once again is 0401 213 236. Get in contact with him for a free chat and see how he and his team can help you get on top of your home loan and find you that best deal. And also, if you want to be driving around in the shiniest and cleanest car in town, contact Scott from Brightside Detailing and Ceramics. He is on Instagram and Facebook as well, or you can contact him on 0449 544 086. Let him know also that you heard it here on the Paracave podcast. BTZD Teamwear as well. Head to www.btzd.com.au and check out their range of team sportswear and see what they can do for you, and let them know that you heard it here on the Paracave podcast as well. And also, please support these businesses that support the podcast as well. That they help bring you quality entertainment each week. And also share the love on socials as well. I'd love to see some pictures on social media channels of your interactions with these businesses, and also if you've purchased any products from them or driving around in a shiny and clean car that has been done by Scott at Brightside Detailing and Ceramics. Thank you again to you, the listeners, who are currently listening to this podcast. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, but I'm sure you probably have, please subscribe to the podcast. So as soon as it drops, you'll be able to listen to it. I really appreciate the support, and please let your family and friends know about it. If they're a rugby league lover, which I know that there is plenty out there, let them know about the podcast and let them know where they can listen to some quality content as well. Thank you once again to the official media partner of the podcast, the Parramatta Times. For all your local Parramatta news, simply head to www.parramattatimes.com.au. That's it from me for this week. Have a great week as best you can. When I say that's all from me this week, it is all from me this week in terms of a Legends or Fans interview. But don't forget, there is also the Wednesday podcast of my chat with the Duckman from Pulse FM, and also the Talking Para podcast as well, the Eels chat that I have with them as well on a Thursday as well. So the NRL season is well and truly underway. There's been some great footy being played so early in the season. Enjoy your footy as best you can. Make sure you follow the podcast on the socials for some interesting content and to see who is coming up on the podcast, both on Instagram and Facebook as well. Give them a follow. Give the Paracave podcast a follow on those as well. Some great and interesting guests coming your way over the next few weeks. But to sign off the show, before I get to signing off the show, I just wanted to ask a question of you, the listeners, that you may be able to comment on the podcast platform that you listen to. I just want to ask a question. Now, my team, the Parramatta Eels, they've lost 2 games in a row, unfortunately. And in those 2 games, Ryan Madison has been suspended from the grand final last year. Now, my question to you is, should suspended games be included in trial games? And should they be included in trial games? If Ryan had that suspension for 3 weeks, he could have served 2 in the trial games. I'm not saying that Ryan Madison would have been the difference between winning or losing, but we saw during the World Cup a lot of representative players had a few games taken off their suspensions from the NRL for the World Cup. But should trial games be included in suspensions? So comment on the podcast platform that you listen to, the Parra Cave podcast, and I'll be interested to see your comments. But now, to sign off the show, and as I always say, the Parra Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Parra!